Michael Pilhofer.
Hello, Kate Jackson.
So I had a quote that kind of popped up for me today that I have thought about for years, honestly, but I thought it might be something that you and I can talk about. Can I share it with you?
Love it. Love it.
Okay. So if you coach for results, sometimes you'll get growth. If you coach for growth, you will always get results.
That is awesome.
Isn't that good? And I apologize, I don't know who said that. It's an anonymous quote for me, but I felt like it really could resonate very easily for both of us in our respective businesses. So I'd love to know, like, as you're listening to that, what comes up for you in your business?
I mean, it ties so beautifully into sort of just the fitness industry. I mean, which is such a results driven. I mean, go find any magazine, think of any ad or Facebook or Insta, and what isn't being presented with some sort of data point. Lose X pounds in. Look how this person did this. Gain X amount of strength. Lose. It's always a number. Or the business side of, and I get it. But sort of the markety side of fitness is always talking about identify the goal in the client. I find their pain point, get the, and then from that, once we identify that little nugget, we can then find the right package, i.e. $, that equates to that. And I have always struggled with that, because while I can understand and I see it potentially from a client's perspective of outlining sort of these markers that they can sort of, work towards. I have always sort of tried to impart upon the people that come to MSP Fitness with more, and it's such an overused term, but more about just the journey side of fitness and more about the enjoyment and really seeing the longevity piece of what we do, so that we don't get so myopic into these little pieces, because I also see all too well the potency of how life gets in the way of these things. And if I am a business owner claiming to a client that in 6 months I will, and I only get the joy of spending 3 or 4 hours a week with you, and you get all those other hours away from me, and how many conversations have we had around the various factors of life that impact immensely results and the complexities and truths of what really needs to go into sort of moving the organism along in a positive way. I feel like I'm being disingenuous. I mean, there are people that come to me and say, I want to lose X pounds, and I've got like 60 days to do it or 30 days to do it. And I won't tell them I can do that with you, to the point that they're frustrated. I'm like, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, we will work together. I will do my best, and I will work with you, and we will have metrics along the way, but I can't promise that you can do that, because there's just too many unknowns between now and then.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that, but I could go on forever, and I'll stop because now you need to share. But it's so intertwined in my industry. It actually, I think, to the detriment of the person. I would rather see people simply enjoy the process, and we will get results along the way, to the point of your quote. Yeah.
Yeah, this might be like a 3-part series by the time we're done with it. We'll see. But yeah, I think, I look at the culture of the US in general, right, is a culture focused on winning. And winning means how quickly can we get to the result? And so we've all been trained to find the answer the fastest, get to the end goal the quickest, and then we will be rewarded. And as you say, the journey is not often rewarded. And to think that life is linear, to think that our improvement is always linear is fallacy. Part of results, part of growth is falling backwards a few times and getting back up on the horse and saying, okay, I'm going to try this again, because then you have learned resiliency, which we've talked about a lot. You've learned what it feels like to fall off of the path that you were on, but now you figured out a way to get back on it. And that can almost be more growth than reaching the end goal at times, because you've learned, I think about times, well, even, working with you. So I worked with you consistently for, every week for 3 or 4 years, I think it was. And then I kind of stopped for a while. But I know I always have the ability to come back to that, and I will be coming back to that. But sometimes, life gets in the way, as you said. And so part of the growth path, part of the results is really learning how to work with the funniness of life, which is, it's not a linear path. It's a path that's all squiggly and crazy and circly, and we don't necessarily always know which direction it's going in. But to bump ourselves out of this training that we have from a cultural standpoint of, if I'm not reaching the end goal, if I'm not reaching the results, then somehow I've failed, or I'm bad, or I'm not doing enough.
Yes, and you hit a point that made me reminded me of something that's so epic in my world, which is we know. I joke that we are kind of part of that MTV generation. Like, I'm the remote control generation, but for me, like, it was still like, okay, I'm going to watch it for maybe a minute before I change the channel. Now it's like, if it doesn't catch me in 3 seconds, I'm out. So people come to me and they want, like, because again, they are inundated with the fastest, the quickest 2 weeks, 7 days, blah, blah, blah. And I generally am like the faster the result that you're thinking you're going to get, like, the quicker it's going to be fleeting. I mean, people come to me and they've spent years not necessarily following the best habits that they could for themselves. And they've sort of worked, whether it's weight or otherwise, gotten themselves to a certain portion of that continuum of fitness, which is just a continuum. There's no like end point either way, hopefully. And I always, sometimes I've had to say, like, if it took you a year to get here, like 2 weeks to get out of it, like, what if it took you 6 months to slowly, steadily? It's like, I don't know, I don't think I could. Well, then what are we talking about? Then why are we even talking about any change? So I think that speed issue is so important to consider. Yeah.
I often think about that too. I don't know if I was listening to a podcast or just I was having discussions with people, but I think about well-being in organizations, because I was in the corporate world at one point in time, and I would love to be back in helping the corporate world with well-being. And there's this push for wellness programs, which is fine. They're generally sort of biometric measurements and some kind of 30-day weight loss challenges. That's oftentimes sort of what they are compiled of. And there's this idea of, well, we have to have results within 3 months, and therefore we're going to do this program. It's going to be 3 months long. We're going to pay for that, and then you go away. And if you don't reach the results, therefore this program has failed and we've wasted our money. Well, how often do they come back and do another 3-month program, like over and over and over again, rather than taking a more holistic approach on the front end to say, okay, this needs to be comprehensive. We need to invest in it. We need to give people time to move forward, fall back, move forward, fall back, and realize it's a process. It's a journey. It's not a goal with the goal end in mind. And then suddenly, miraculously, life is perfect again. Like, just because you've lost 30 pounds in 30 days doesn't mean you're not going to probably struggle with your weight after 30 days.
Right.
Just because you're looking to be, strong and improve your strength and improve your bone density, like in my case, doesn't mean that if I work at it for 6 months and then stop doing it, suddenly there's just not we should change our mindsets around this end point mindset that we have, I think.
But don't you feel that in some way really exposes sort of the truth or the depth behind the goal and the person's willingness to take those actions in like a good or a bad way, where oftentimes one of the biggest things that I find myself helping my clients with is trying to better represent what actions need to be had to equate to the goal that they claim for themselves? Like, what is it really going to take? And then asking if those actions are something that they are willing to do for the long term. And oftentimes when we really get down to the brass knuckles of it and really try to display, like, this is actually the work that you have to do to get what you claim you want. Like, do you really want that? Or is maybe where you are not so bad? Like, let's really evaluate, because I'm always thinking about, like, I have no interest in 30-day, even 3-month challenges. Like, I want, if we're going to make any nutritional changes, if we're going to make physical changes, if we're going to try to accomplish something, like, I want this to be a long-term, like, forever. It seems so silly, but like a forever thing. Or why are we doing it? I mean, you could get into the myopic thing, and I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm not trying to belittle, like, hey, maybe somebody has a huge event, a wedding or something. And I can understand a very time-specific goal, and maybe I might loosen my larger perspectives on that a little bit for something like that. But generally speaking, I'm always thinking longevity. I'm always thinking long-term. And if we're not thinking of taking actions to accomplish that goal, maybe we should better understand what we're doing and why. And then I will, one more point, sorry, not to monopolize the conversation. I think we've talked about weight a fair amount, because I think it's such an easy place to go with a quote like that to some degree. And I'm always quick to respond to people. Let's be very clear that weight doesn't necessarily equate to health. Like, it is not simple. There is no, like, we can talk BMI and the fallacy of that reality. Let's be very clear that just because you are an X weight one way or the other within a very reasonable gray continuum, like, that does not equate to health. There are much larger things in play there. So I always want to help people think about those things, because so often I need to be healthier, so I need to be less weight.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that speaks back to this external motivation, that the culture is sort of telling us how we should be, what we should be, how we should be doing it. And so, whether it's weight or it's something else, it's the perception that my culture expects me to be this, versus really identifying what's the internal motivation for why you're even here today. And I think back to like, one of my very favorite stories I love to share about my work is a woman that came to me to lose weight. And I don't often work with clients that want to lose weight. But she had been struggling with weight for 7 years and had tried every diet, every exercise. She'd put a lot of effort into trying to figure out how to lose weight. And she was super frustrated and just felt totally stuck. Talked about this holistically, her life holistically. So, nothing about diet, nothing about fitness per se. It was more about, like, what is your life like? What is your day like? How do you operate in your day? And it was just learning about her as a person, like what was in her world. And she came back in the third session and sat down first thing and said, I know why I haven't been able to lose weight. And I was, I had no idea what she was going to say to me. And she said, I never dealt with the grief of my adult son dying 7 years ago. And she said, until you helped me make that connection, I never would have gotten there. And this is the thing that gets me pretty passionate and revved up when we talk about these sort of things, because I think oftentimes, like, back to this 3-month organizational, wellness challenge or whatever, if you don't have somebody that you feel safe in talking to, if you don't have somebody that you can trust to be vulnerable with and share something outside of just the goal that you want of, let's say, losing weight, because we're kind of on that today, you're never getting to somebody's internal motivations to really feel differently. This woman wanted to feel differently. Yes, the weight was a big part of that for her, but even her, when she showed up that third session, she said, I don't even worry about my weight right now. I know what I have to work on, and I just know the weight's going to come off now that I have figured this out. So she shifted her whole mindset as to what was internally motivating her to make change and why she had been stuck. And I think that gets missed often if you are constantly looking externally or culturally to what is a result and what's the right result, or what should somebody else be telling me I should do for myself, rather than getting in touch with what do I want to do for myself.
Well, I think you hit it on the head, which is also, I mean, let's not lie. We are passionate about what we do and how we do it. And we are high touch people. And we'll just stay on the weight front, because it's just, you know, how often is it just it's just a plan or a program or some generic thing or some impersonal sort of template thing that's thrown out there, and food logs and you know, meal plans and stuff, and no learning and no accountability and no conversation around anything else, and it's just about food. But I was working with a client, we were probably working together 3-4 years together, and food and nutrition came up as part of our conversation many times, and we interfaced a couple of different places on it and did some food logs and tried some things, but nothing ever kind of took hold. And I'm not judging, I never judge that. It's like, okay, then we'll move on. You know, there was no huge dissatisfaction on her part, and we just kind of moved around, and then it would come back in the ethos and we talk about it and talk through it. And then there was one time when we were kind of getting after it a little bit more, and we were having just a great conversation around it, and she felt very obviously comfortable and safe with me, and she shared that she remembers back in the day when, and this was around a certain weight target that she had, and at one point it was around a certain dress size that she wanted to get to as a goal. I want to get to X. And she shared with me that there was one time, because it's usually a question that I will ask at some point too, is like, well, back in, you know, historically, was there a time where you were, you know, is this something we're trying to get, I want to find out if we're trying to get back to something, like, where is this motivation coming from? And she shared that there was a time where she did do X, Y, and Z steps and achieved her goal and got to X weight and a certain dress size, but she admitted to me that she still looked in the mirror and hated what she saw. Are we really talking about chicken and broccoli at that point? It has nothing to do with chicken and broccoli. No. And she was very kind in that we were able to talk deeper into that. And what I would say, identify some truths of what was really going on that had nothing to do with food, but manifested themselves as a food goal.
Yep.
These are things and conversations that you can't have in a global gym of thousands, you know, in a self-help generic program that's just overlaid amongst a population. This is a conversation. This is people talking to people, building trust. And to your point, you know, being able to be able to share things. But that's okay, because we can change the world one at a time. And I'm happy with that.
It's just to have this conversation, you know, if it changes one person's perspective on, wow, I've been looking at this in a way that maybe isn't serving me best, and maybe I need to think about going at it differently. Awesome. Like, that would make my day if somebody replied to this and said, boy, I've been, you know, hitting my head against the wall following these 30-day challenges or trying to reach this X goal, and not realizing that there's just layers and journeys, and it might be more than what I am thinking it is.
Kate, I love our conversations, and I learn something every time, and and we will keep having it just for that selfish reason.
It's good stuff, Michael. Good stuff.
Wonderful. Thank you. Always a treat, and great quote to bring to the table. So we'll have the next call soon and have a new topic on hand.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.